Hi, friends. Good evening, everyone, and welcome for today's session on quite a different and distinct topic, taxation of MNCs heading towards the resolution. So, this is something which is in the backdrop of the G7 meet, which happened on June 6th, a few days back, and what was the outcome of that meet, the ramifications, what implication it shall have, and the way forward for the purpose of taxing MNCs, where like people have or the business house have businesses across the globe, and how the taxability will occur. So before that, I would like to acknowledge the efforts of Deepika and Gracelyn for preparing this presentation. The legends used ADS, Automated Digital Services, ALP, Arms Length Price, BEPS, Base Erosion and Profit Shifting, CIT, Corporate Income Tax, EL, Equalization Levy, EU, European Union, GMT, Global Minimum Tax, MNCs, Multinational Corporations, OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, PE, Permanent Establishment. Schema for the evening, friends. The background, what exactly has been happening, the measures, what has been taken till now, maybe by OECD or various developed and developing economies, the decision of G7, what it was, significance and impact of that decision, or what was the outcome of that, and the way forward. So, starting with the background, friends, for years, yeah, we can see that governments have been grappling to tax MNCs. So, it's not again a story of one government itself, but across the globe, all the governments have found it rather not so easy but difficult to tax MNCs. Surged government debt levels and fiscal deficits have pushed economists to reform the global tax system, looking towards it as a potential to boost their coffers. The long debated issue on global corporate taxation has been taken for new forms in the past decade, upon which the recent G7 decision proposing to ratify the recommendations of OECD on two-pillar approach is all set to on wheels now. So the G7 meet was to tax the MNCs for their profitability, and more or so, it is not official, but yes, the recommendations of OECD on two-pillar approach have some importance, or had some importance in this G7 meet as well. What it was, we'll see later, friends. What was happening around? Parking profits to tax havens and digital business models exploiting PE concept. So these two were the main tool employed by the MNCs for the purpose of mitigating with their tax liabilities. From higher tax to low tax jurisdictions, the profits were being shifted, and there was digital business models. So to in a concept where there is in an area where there is more of technological advancement and digitalization, here digital business models were being used to exploit the physical presence in any jurisdiction. So these were the two things which were happening across the globe and being exploited by various MNCs. Impact of BEPS. So what was the impact of base erosion and profit shifting? BEPS again is a major significant developing country with a heavy reliance on corporate income tax. MNCs use BEPS to gain a competitive advantage over enterprises that operate at a domestic level. The OECD estimates that BEPS practices cost around 240 billion in annual loss revenue, representing 10% of the overall global corporate income tax revenue. So, friends, you can see the impact when MNCs get into these BEPS practices, that is eroding their tax base and shifting their profit to from higher tax to lower tax. The ramifications can be seen in terms of the annual loss revenue, which is close to around $240 billion, which is roughly 10% of the global corporate income tax revenue. Again, further stats, according to an economist at Bank of America, about 60% of US multinationals reported foreign income was booked in 7 small countries with relatively small economies. So 60% of US multinationals have parked their income or paid their tax in very small economies or small countries as per an economist at Bank of America in 2019. Which are those small seven countries? The Bermuda, the Cayman Islands, the Ireland, the Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Singapore, and Switzerland. India's annual tax loss due to corporate tax abuse is estimated at over USD 10 billion. So you can see the impact, friends. What happens when MNCs get into such practices? What are the existing measures which were being taken? OECD BEPS Action Plan and UN Model Treaty. So again, in 2015, OECD came up with a BEPS Action Plan which formulated 15 action points, basis which there would be economic activities would be seen in substance where they are, and wherever there are economic activities, the profits to should belong to that jurisdiction or that country. Amongst other things, it proposed three interim options as well to tackle the issues emerging from digital taxations transactions. First is significant economic presence. Second, the withholding tax on digital transactions, and third being equalization levy. What were those BEPS section plans? Firstly, tax challenges arising from digitalization, utilizing the effects of hybrid mismatch arrangements, controlled foreign company rules, limitations on interest deductions, harmful tax practices, prevention of tax treaty abuse, permanent establishment status, transfer pricing. There were three action plans relating to transfer pricing, BEPS data analysis, mandatory disclosure rules, country by country reporting, mutual agreement protocol, and multilateral instruments. So these were 15 BEPS sections plans. How countries responded to this in the recent past, so from 2015 till now, we've seen that in countries like India have implemented various measures such as interest deductibility limits, country by country reporting in accordance with OECD recommendations. Further, there are equalization levies and digital service taxes which are being levied across the globe. India, you can see here there is incidence of equalization levy as well. However, such interim measures imposed by developing countries such as India and few EU countries like Italy, UK, Spain, etc., have fumed up the US government, contending that the same was targeted against its homeland techno giants. So, on one hand, you can see there were different levies which were being introduced. There were measures in terms of interest deductibility limits, country by country reporting. But on the other hand, US, being the big daddy, said that the unilateral levies like equalization levies and digital service taxes were targeted or were being coined only to target their homeland techno giants. So this is where how the countries, the various countries responded to the BEPS section plans and other unilateral measures. What was the decision of G7? So before that, we'll see, as we have seen, as I've said, friends, the decision of G7 was mainly or loosely based on the OECD two-pillar approach. So let us see, friends, now what was the two-pillar approach of OECD. It released the blueprints of proposed solutions to address taxation arising from the accelerating digitalization and globalization of the world economy, and agreed to endeavor for a consensus solution by mid-2021. So, friends, the OECD two-pillar approach was to tackle the taxation issue arising from globalization and digitalization. So, it framed two pillars. Pillar one comprised of profit allocation rules between jurisdictions in case of cross-border transactions and other nexus-based rules. It focused on rules so as to ensure that MNCs pay some amount of tax in the market country. So the nutshell, the substance of pillar one was MNCs should pay taxes in the country where they actually operate. What was pillar two based on? Pillar two introduced the concept of global anti-base erosion, ensuring minimum levels of taxation on MNCs doing business around the world. So Pillar 2 again said that there has to be a minimum percentage of tax for MNCs when they are operating across the globe. It also focused on allowing a right to tax back where other jurisdictions have not exercised their primary taxing rights, or the payment is otherwise subject to lower levels of effective taxing. So, for example, there's an MNC for which head office is there in India, and it is operating in various countries. And say, for example, while operating in other countries, say in Ireland, it is paying taxes at a lower rate of say 10 or 12.5%. So Pillar 2 recommended that the Indian government, because the MNC is a resident of India, it has a right to tax back where other jurisdictions. So again, a minimum percentage would be prescribed, and the Indian government can charge that extra or the difference between the tax which is already being paid by that MNC in that other country and that minimum percentage. So this was pillar two. Now let us see what was the G7 tax deal all about. In June 2021, as we have seen, friends, a group of G7, that is seven countries. What are those countries, friends? The US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, and the UK. So they came to and completed a historical global tax agreement to create an international tax system fit to deal with tax challenges arising from operations of MNCs and digital giants. So you can see, friends, OECD said to tackle the tax issues for digitalization and globalization. Here specifically the words used were MNCs and digital giants. Pillar one, again, what it says: pay tax where your market is. It focuses on, so pillar one focus on rules making MNC paying taxes where they operate. This would apply to global companies with at least a 10% profit margin. How it would apply: 20% of the profit above the 10% margin would be reallocated and taxed in the market country. So this was pillar one. Friends, I would like to say nothing has come official. The blueprint has not been finalized or it has come out yet. This is just a few glimpse of what the G7 tax deal was all about. Nothing in detail has been said, like okay, how the 10% profit margin would be calculated, whether it would be calculated on the consolidated global turnover of that MNC, or the 10% profit margin would be seen only for that particular market country. Again, second pillar two, pay a minimum amount of tax on overseas operations. Pillar 2 is set to impose a minimum global tax rate of at least 15% on overseas profit. Government could still set whatever local corporate tax rate they want. So 15% was set in the G7 tax deal, that okay, a minimum tax of 15%, but government can still say they can set a local tax rate of 20% as well. If companies pay lower rates in particular country, their home governments could top up their taxes to the minimum rate, eliminating the advantage of shifting profits. So they gave an example, friends. If an Indian MNC is paying taxes, say at the rate of 12.5% in a country like say Ireland, now with this recommendation in place, or rather once they fructify with this, the company, the Indian company or the Indian government can charge, say if at all it is keeping a minimum global tax rate of 15%, it is not coming up with its own local tax rate. So that being the case, 2.5% can be additionally charged by Indian government to that particular MNC. So now what were the open-ended issues in this? The decision is widely in considered with OECD's two-pillar approach, as we have seen, friends. However, certain aspects are left open to be addressed, and there is no clarity as the policy decision specifics are yet to be published. The scope of invocation of pillar one is ambiguous. As we have seen, friends, will 10% margin apply to consolidated profits of the MNE group or profit margin in the market country? If you see, friends, OECD recommended in its two-pillar approach an option either on consolidated or segment-wise. Further, a threshold was recommended by OECD for applicability of pillar one, that is pillar A. The same has not been deliberated by G7 while discussing on this tax deal. Thirdly, in pillar two, whether government can set the local tax rate as the benchmark for the top up, or the proposed top tax rate of 15% should be the maximum rate. There again, there is no clarity, friends, whether, say for example, if 15% is what is envisaged in the pillar two, and government is fixing, say 20% as a local rate, they are sidelining at 15%. And say there is an Indian MNC which is paying taxes at the rate of say 12%, 12.5% in a country like Ireland. So now whether that top up would be 15 minus 12.5 of 2.5% in India by the Indian government, or it would be 20 minus 12.5, which is 7.5% by the Indian government. So there is no clarity. So these are still the open-ended issues which are still yet to be deliberated upon. As we have seen, friends, uh, again in July 2021, now when G7, US, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the UK had come together in July 2021, G20, again a consortium of developing countries would come and again discuss on what has been discussed by G7. G7, and also we can expect that there will be some issues, as we have seen, would be deliberated or rather confirmed upon, or there will be some more clarity on the way forward as to how to take forward the taxation piece for the MNC and the digital giants. Impact of G7 deal. So what will happen if this pillar 1 and pillar 2, after the ratification or by the G20 countries in July, what shall be the impact? Would capture around 100 multinational as estimates as per Joe Biden's administration. 100 multinational will get covered under pillar 1. Pillar 2 again would capture, adopting the 15% global minimum tax, would capture around 8,000 multinational, including oil and mining giants and few banks such as HSBC, Barclays, etc. The G7 countries would gain around $168 billion in terms of increased corporate income taxes, out of which US would gain by 21% in CIT collection, the corporate income tax collections, which is roughly around $84 billion annually. Countries like UK, Germany, and France would gain around 15 to 30% in terms of CIT collections. Countries like India would gain at least $13 billion, which is an increase of 8% from financial year 2021 IT collections. Country like China would gain around $72 billion when this pillar 1 and pillar 2 are in place and it is being ratified. Please note, friends, above mentioned estimates are not conclusive and have been taken from various secondary sources. We have not got the formal sources for it. It has been taken through various articles, but yes, more or less, it looks to be in this direction. Economies who will fill the pinch. So countries like say India, China, UK, US, we have seen there will be rise in their corporate income tax, but which countries will have a kind of a disadvantage when this comes into picture? Obviously, tax havens such as Jersey and Guernsey Islands, Cyprus, Luxembourg, Malta, and the Netherlands will stand to lose significant share of tax revenue. Obviously, there would not be shifting of tax profits to these jurisdictions. Ireland again has come out with the global minimum targeting that it would be disruptive to its economic model. Ireland could lose up to 2 billion euros, that is 1.5, 1.5, $1.7 billion a year if the recommendation gets ratified. The country which levies corporate tax at 12.5%. Ireland charges corporate income tax at 12.5% and has lower rates for profits on patents, raised 11.8 billion in corporate tax last year. So this is a stat. Now going forward, if this pillar A and pillar 2 are in place, it could lose up to 2 billion euros in terms of tax if this gets fructified, this gets ratified. What will be the possible impact on India if this is the way forward, the pillar A and pillar 2, or pillar 1 or pillar 2 is the way forward? India is likely to benefit. It will be a positive for India. There will be advantage for India from the global minimum 15% corporate tax, as the effective domestic tax rate is above the threshold. However, on adoption of G7 recommendation, India would have to give up on equalization levy. So India again can't say will continue with the equalization levy and will adopt the G7 recommendation as well. No, once they adopt G7 recommendation, it has to give up its equalization levy. Again, India would still continue to attract investment and would benefit owing to the big market potential for MNCs and digital giants. Adopting Pillar 2 would not hurt FDI in India or cause incremental tax liability in the hands of foreign investors, given that recently there has been a 15% tax rate for new manufacturing businesses, which has been legislated recently in India. On outbound investment, it will prevent base erosion of tax in the country in India, as the government will be able to claw back any shortfall in tax paid below 15% by an overseas business owned by an Indian resident. As I gave an example of Indian MNC paying 12.5% tax in Ireland. Issues and challenges talked over. What are the various issues and still deliberations which are happening? 15% tax rate is too low. Several countries are pushing for a higher rate, contending that companies may step over it. This is because while a 15% tax rate would make a difference to a company shifting its profit to a no or low tax country, the impact on those headquartered in a country like Ireland would nowhere be as drastic. That's why it is being said like 15% seems to be a bit lower. Again, US Treasury proposed a 21% global minimum tax rate because they had been shifting their tax rates from 21% to 28% under the newly elected Joe Biden's administration. They had said about minimum tax rate being 21%, but as of now, what has come from that summit, that G7 summit, is 15%. Further, a global minimum tax rate would essentially take away a tool that countries use to push policies that suit them. A lower tax rate used by tax havens to push economic activity. So now, friends, there are various tax havens as we have seen, friends. Malta, Cyprus, Guernsey, Jersey. They had lower, Ireland for that matter, they had lower income tax rate, and that was attracting many people, or that was augmenting the economic activities in these jurisdictions. Now, with global minimum tax rate of 15% or whatever is getting ratified, if that is being in place, it will hit the tax havens in terms of the economic activities. So, what shall be the way forward, friends? The proposal global would end the race to bottom in corporate tax and help the global economy thrive. If pursued well, it will level the playing field for businesses and encourage countries to compete on positive basis, such as educating and training their workforce and investing in research and development and infrastructure. Key details of G7 still needs to be delivered, as we have seen, friends. This is just something which has come out of that meet. Even there's no blueprint which is still out there, and full implementation might take some years as well. We may see some developments in this regard in the upcoming July G20 meet. There should be appropriate coordination between the application of new international tax rules, including the digital services tax. So, with this being in place, again, countries should see like where they are unilateral levies, like say economic equalization levy or digital services tax, where there have these are in place. There has to be a coordination, and it can't be like countries should be losing while by giving up their unilateral levies. Overall, countries with moderate tax system like India would stand to benefit at the cost of, obviously, at the cost of tax havens with lower nil tax rates. So we have to wait and watch again in July as well. Again, we'll come up with a seminar on that as well. What was the outcome of the G20 meet specifically on this? And we'll see whether any developments have happened as to what was being said in the G7 meeting. So these were some of our thoughts, friends, on the recently concluded G7 summit on taxation for MNCs and digital giants. Thank you, friends.